The Legend of Zelda is a franchise that has reshaped gaming many times before. Coming off the critically acclaimed Breath of the Wild, Nintendo wanted to create a DLC. However, ambitions became so great, Nintendo felt it was only right to label this new entry as a sequel. Many had full confidence in Nintendo due to their track record of delivering great games, while others were skeptical due to early gameplay footage that didn't truly show the new additions included in this sequel. Slap on a new price point of $70 and concerns only increased. Nintendo has a lot to prove with Tears of the Kingdom. Is this originally planned expansion deserving of being a sequel? Will they be able to reassure the classic Zelda fans that were unsatisfied with certain aspects of Breath of the Wild? Did they improve upon what did work with Breath of the Wild to justify the increased price? I'll be going over my experience with the most praised game of the year to see if it's the modern day Majora's Mask or is Nintendo's head just stuck in the cloud. Let's begin with the story. I will be spoiling the plot of Tears of the Kingdom. However, I will be giving my spoiler-free opinion for now. The story is fine. Nintendo is good at creating charming characters, although in this game, not very deep. Good guys are just good guys, and bad guys are just bad. No true motivation is expressed, which Nintendo can do but chose not to. This will leave anyone wanting something beyond the surface level of character and plot development lacking. The story is entertaining, although has plot holes that I'll be going over. In short, if you want a fun tale that doesn't require any thinking or makes any sense, you will enjoy it. Story starts when Link and Zelda investigating this new gloom problem around Hyrule. This leads them under Hyrule Castle, where they discover Zone 9 artifacts and ancient drawings depicting the creation of Hyrule and the imprisoning war. Down as they go, they find a mummy Ganondorf and a glowing arm. The arm drops what would be later called a secret stone from his hand that Zelda picks up. Ganondorf wakes up and starts doing what Demon Kings do. Evil. He attacks Link and Zelda and breaks the Master Sword. Although the Master Sword does hurt him, it's not enough. Ganondorf already knows both of them and taunts their efforts. He then sends Hyrule Castle into the sky, along with causing Zelda to fall underground. Zelda is saved by the Secret Stone, teleporting her through time. Keep in mind, Link doesn't know this. Link, after trying to save her, is saved by the glowing arm, which belongs to King Rauru, a Zonai and founder of Hyrule. His arm, now attached to Link, informs him he must help Zelda. Link, now on the Great Sky Island, recovers the broken Master Sword, the Pura Pad, and learns his new powers given to him through Rauru's arm. Link then places the Master Sword in a glowing light, sending the broken Master Sword to Zelda in the past. Link now heads down to Hyrule to find Zelda. Link, after meeting up with Pura, is told about all the oddities going on in Hyrule. Each region has different issues, and of course it's up to Link to solve them. There are these chasms that are popping up all over the place, and these strange sightings of Zelda. Now I'll go ahead and tell you, this isn't the real Zelda, and honestly I don't think even a child would be fooled by this, as fake Zelda is at the center of every major region of Hyrule's problem. Before we get more into each region, we need to talk to our old friend Impa. We find Impa researching geoglyphs, basically giant drawings that are all over Hyrule, and each one of these drawings happens to have a tear inside of it. These reveal what happens to Zelda after she disappeared. We will go over that later, but first, this is one of my big problems with this story. See, Nintendo decided to reuse the same system from Breath of the Wild, where Link can find memories from the past. That was fine in Breath of the Wild, because these flashbacks can be found in any order and don't spoil the story if you find them out of order, because we already are told a summary of what happened in the present day. The flashbacks just added more context in Breath of the Wild. However, in Tears of the Kingdom, this isn't how this works, as we know nothing about what Zelda is up to in the past, so knowing which order to find these in is very important if you don't want to spoil the plot. Now, Nintendo does give you a quest that you can do at any time that will hint to which order you should find these tears in. So what's the issue? Well, this game is huge and you will run into many quests. You will not know that you should actually ignore everything and beeline it to this quest before finding any tears after the first one you will find with Impa. This is where the freedom in gameplay Nintendo provided clashes with storytelling. Nintendo restricts the player for story purposes a few times in Tears of the Kingdom already, so they aren't against doing it, but to protect the big twist, I guess Nintendo didn't care. Moving on, Link also has one more task on top of everything else. He must explore the depths, an underground Hyrule full of darkness and gloom. As Link goes to each major region of the Goron, the Gerudo, the Rito, the Zora, and the Sheikah, he must help them with their problems caused by Ganondorf and this fake Zelda. Instead of explaining every little detail of this simplistic story, I'll sum up these regional phenomena. The Rito are under a blizzard storm, and Link and Tulin must travel to the Wind Temple to stop it. Tulin, who is very naive, learns the importance of teamwork by hanging with Link. After defeating the boss, Tulin sees his ancestor, the Sage of Wind, who passes on his secret stone to Tulin and tasks him with saving Hyrule. This was all set up by the real Zelda in the past. This stops the blizzard and Tulin becomes the Sage of Wind. The Goron are under possession by marbled rock roast, which Yunobo has been giving them due to him being controlled by the fake Zelda through a strange mask. After kicking his butt, we free him from the mask. He doesn't remember much of what happens, but feels guilty and wants to help Link. After chasing the fake Zelda into Death Mountain, they end up at the Fire Temple. After beating the boss, he becomes the Sage of Fire, and everyone is free of the rock roast curse. Now, something fishy is going on at Zora's domain with all this dirty sludge covering the place up. After talking to Sidon and many other fish people, Link learns that there is a secret passage underwater. After going underwater, Link finds a switch creating a waterfall connecting him to the sky. Link and Sidon head to the water temple, where you do what you did multiple times already. Flip some switches and beat the boss. Sidon becomes the Sage of Water, and the sludge is gone. Now off to Gerudo Town, which is under a horrible sandstorm, and Gibdos are attacked. Gibdos are basically zombies that only take damage after being hit by lightning. Link gets into Gerudo Town and finds everyone hiding underground. After finding Ryuji, Link teams up with her to go to war with these monsters. With the Gerudo Town safe for now, they head to the source of the Gibdos, which is, you guessed it, the Lightning Temple. Again, you flip a switch and put the monster in a ditch. And now Ryuji becomes the Lightning Sage and the sandstorm is now gone. Now, after everything, Link gets word that Zelda has been seen at Hyrule Castle. We know it's the fake Zelda, but Link still is unaware and goes around following her as she keeps sending monsters to kill him. In the center of the castle, fake Zelda finally reveals she's, well, the fake, and Phantom Ganon pops up to talk his junk. Link and the sages put him down, then they regroup. Thinking about what to do next, Pyrrha is reminded there's another sage that must be found. With only one place to go, Link goes to Kakariko Village. Until now, Link wasn't allowed to explore the floating ruins around Kakariko Village due to fake Zelda telling the villagers that it was dangerous. Now, in my opinion, I found this to be very silly. It's too many examples showing that Zelda is a fake before she blatantly spells it out for you. It also again shows that Nintendo, for plot purposes, will stop you from doing something, but again, they didn't think to restrict the spawns of the geoglyphs. To speed this up, Link heads all over the damn place, ends up finding a mask artifact. It's not Majora's Mask, it's Mineru's mask. Who the hell is that? She's Raru's sister and the Spirit Sage. Get this, she's been with you the whole time inside the Pyrrha Pad. It will make more sense when I go over Zelda's side of the story. Down in the depths, Mineru is in spirit form, so she needs a new body. You take the mask and other body parts she left and basically make her into a freaking mech. Yeah, I was actually surprised about this. Now we have to go to the Spirit Temple to retrieve her secret stone. After fighting a robot boss similar to Nintendo's game ARMS, we get the secret stone and Mineru is good to go. Now we can finally talk about Zelda and why this story makes no sense at all. So Zelda, now in the past, is with Raru and Queen Sonia, the founders of Hyrule. Zelda, just like in Breath of the Wild, struggles with her powers, as her powers plus the secret stone is what got her into this time period. Trying to find a way home, Minoru just so happens to mention that she could turn herself into an eternal dragon. Yes, Zelda could turn into Shenron in order to live long enough to make it back to modern time. Now, I don't have to explain why it would be insane to become a dragon just to return home, as it's pretty self-explanatory. But Minoru, after suggesting it, then explains it's dangerous, and whoever becomes a dragon by swallowing a secret stone will be stuck that way and lose themselves. Keep that lose themselves part in your back pocket for a minute. Now, why would Minoru even mention this? Why even tell someone such an extreme option when it's unnecessary? Imagine you came to me needing help finding a job. You aren't homeless or even in a desperate state. Now imagine instead of me saying, let's look online for a job, or let's go drive around and see if anyone's hiring, I say, well, how about you go rob a bank? But it's very dangerous and you can go to prison. My guess to why this is mentioned is simply for foreshadowing. It's bad foreshadowing, but Nintendo makes up for it later. Ganondorf now pops up with no express motivation on why he wants to rule Hyrule, but attacks the castle. Rauru sees this attack and kills off Ganondorf's monsters with the Tri-Beam Cannon. Shouts out to TN. Now mind you, Ganondorf is about 500 miles away from Rauru and somehow spots his small secret stone on his hand that Ganondorf somehow already knows about. Now, Ganondorf has some powers as of now, but if you want me to believe he saw that tiny rock on his hand from 500 miles away while having tiny eyes and a 12-inch bell pepper nose, well, you got me messed up. Ganondorf now is invited to the castle to pledge his allegiance to Rauru, a callback to the Ganondorf of Ocarina of Time, and just like him, he is lying. Zelda warns Rauru that Ganondorf shouldn't be trusted, but Rauru's arrogance makes him overconfident. Zelda begins to bond with Sonia, learning about her time powers. Rauru and Sonia hear Zelda speak of Link in a high manner and begin to tease Zelda as she clearly has feelings for him. Sometime later, Queen Sonia gets killed by Ganondorf as he distracted her by sending a fake Zelda to take her out. But the real Zelda and her already knew what was coming. Ganondorf now has Sonia's secret stone and turns himself into a Super Saiyan 3, Demon King, and causes destruction all over Hyrule. And it appears that he creates the origin of the Blood Moon. Funny, cause as far as we know, Calamity Ganon and Ganondorf have nothing to do with one another, or at least it's not mentioned. Rauru retreats and gets the sages of his time together and gives them secret stones. Zelda finally connects the dots and tells Rauru that Ganondorf is still alive in her time, meaning he will fail and die. Now this is another part that's odd to me. Zelda is supposed to be a very smart character. I really don't get how she didn't know that this was the same person, that Ganondorf from this time isn't the same mummy that she saw earlier. She even mentions that she has suspicion that it was the same person, but at this point, knowing everything she knew, she might as well just make the assumption. So Ganondorf ends up kicking their butts, and Rauru, as a last ditch effort, imprisons Ganondorf in a very cool cutscene, might I add, and Ganondorf is now sealed away. Some time passes and Zelda is very worried about the future. At this moment, the Master Sword appears. Now, I'm not really sure how this happens. I don't know if Zelda did this or Link did this with his powers. Honestly, it seems like the Master Sword somehow did this, but I don't really know. Zelda can understand the Master Sword for some reason, like it's Lassie, and it tells her it needs to be healed. Zelda then decides the best way to do this is to become an eternal dragon, as that will give her enough time and power to charge the sword. Minoru reminds Zelda that she will lose herself, but Zelda is determined to do so. Minoru decides to help her by becoming a spirit and staying inside the Pura Pad. Zelda swallows her secret stone and in a powerful cutscene turns into a dragon and sheds the tears that Link will eventually find in the future. Now, before I explain why this is bad writing, let me say this. My opinion about the story from earlier is true. I truly stand by, if you don't pay attention to the story, it's good, maybe even great. It's simplistic but entertaining. Beautiful cutscenes and good voice acting, but the story doesn't make any sense. First off, this is the sequel to Breath of the Wild, correct? So riddle me this, Batman. If Zelda was a dragon all the way up to the time Link handed her the sword in the future, how did the events of Breath of the Wild happen? Remember, Zelda in dragon form is in the future with Link, so she lived however many thousands of years to reach him as a dragon. She would have been a dragon in Breath of the Wild then too, meaning none of the first game's plot could have happened. This is why time travel stories are easy to jack up. If anyone can give an explanation, then share it in the comment. Now remember what I told you about that line of losing herself when it comes to swallowing the secret stone and turn to an eternal dragon? Now, I'll just go ahead and tell you, Zelda succeeds in fixing the Master Sword. So Zelda doesn't really lose herself because Zelda keeps all her senses and finishes her mission. So what was the point of the warning? Now back to modern day, Link gets the Master Sword and heads under Hyrule to fight Ganondorf. If you stop at the beginning area of the game, you can remove the rocks originally blocking half of the prophecy, and it reveals that Zelda would end up turning into a dragon, which means all these events were already going to happen, which also makes the first game story not make any sense. Because again, if the prophecy shows that Zelda was going to turn into a dragon, that means that Zelda had to be a dragon during the events of Breath of the Wild. Link goes and heads to Ganondorf with the sages. They fight his armies and get separated, so Link has to fight Ganondorf alone. After fighting his base form, he powers up and grows a health bar longer than his nose. The sages help you defeat Ganondorf, but then he decides to pull a Vegeta and transforms into an eternal dragon. Ganondorf surprisingly still evil while in his dragon form. So much for losing oneself. Anyway, Dragon Zelda comes in and you three battle it out in the sky. After destroying Ganondorf's secret stone, he dies and Hyrule is saved. Zelda and Link enter some kind of spiritual realm, and Rauru and Sonya in their ghost form heal Zelda and Link's arm. Zelda and Link then fall from the sky and land in a pool of water. With everyone okay, Zelda shares an intimate word with Link. Some time passes and they return to the Sky Island, where Minoru finally passes on, and Link and the sages vow to protect Hyrule and help Zelda. Now, I already spoke about many things I didn't like, but I want to go over some of the things I did like. For starters, the characters were all charming and I wanted to help them and get to know them. That goes beyond just the main story. That's practically every character in the game. The story and dialogue is entertaining. Nothing amazing, but good enough to where you want to continue on and see what happens next. Even after realizing the story didn't make sense and even being spoiled by the story, I still wanted to continue on. If I could make a suggestion to Nintendo, I would stop using the flashbacks. That worked in Breath of the Wild. Unless you're gonna write a story where flashbacks don't ruin the game, then don't do it. When it comes to using time and going back to the past or to the future, you have to make sure that it doesn't break your already existing story. It would also be nice if Nintendo committed to decisions. Tough decisions. Like, what if Zelda had to be a dragon forever? Or maybe it was the plot for the next game. You see, when characters have to make great decisions like that and have to live with it, it makes it more impactful. Nintendo also could make Ganondorf, or whoever the next villain would be, more evil. As in both this game and Breath of the Wild, Ganondorf's effect is not seen. The majority of the problems in Hyrule were already happening before the events of the game. They did it before in Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, where those villains impacted the world, and the evil that happened around the world, everyone was affected by it. And villagers would actually act scared and frightened when the villains were at their worst. Gameplay has been greatly improved this time around. Many things are the same from Breath of the Wild, such as Link's overall movement, the weapon durability system, exploration, puzzle solving, item collecting, crafting, and the light RPG elements. When it comes to the quests, there are way more this time around. I remember completing Breath of the Wild and most side quests were spread out. In Tears of the Kingdom, they're everywhere. Tears of the Kingdom has major side quests and provide fun optional stories that add a bit of extra understanding with many of the residents of Hyrule. I would not say any of these side quests in my 100+ hour playthrough was anything special. Some games have side quests that are so interesting and memorable they become a highlight of the game. Even though Tears does not have anything that good, I could say I have not played one bad quest yet, and that in itself is amazing. The side quests may not scratch that itch for anyone looking for a rich side story, but the rewards are well worth it. Side quests often give Link items for completion. These items are typically hard to find, and you can even come back to some of these quest givers and repeat the challenge to get more of the item. Items aren't the only reward type. Some quests actually open up new things to do, such as gardening, house building, and racing. I could be wrong, as Tears is a huge game, but there doesn't seem to be any fishing. I hope Nintendo does add that in an update. There is one oddity about quests. For some reason, quests can complete early. I understand why Nintendo did this, as the map is huge and to travel all the way back to turn in a quest would be annoying. The thing that's odd is there are actually extra dialogue that can be found if you return to the quest giver. So I suggest you go back to each quest giver so you don't miss on any funny dialogue. Link's new powers change exploration and combat in such a great way, it'll be hard for Nintendo to top it. Link's Ultra Hand power allows you to grab most objects and stick them together. You could build a bridge to cross a gap, attach a wagon to a horse, or even build a car. Thanks to these new Zonai items, Link can construct battery-powered creations. Cars, planes, hovercrafts, traps, launchers, or anything you could think of can be done. Nintendo handled this perfectly, as the controls for Ultra Hand are easy to grasp, and for quests, you don't have to be the creative type. You could be as simple as you want to, so no one is stuck due to lack of creativity or imagination. Sadly, your creations can disappear by entering certain buildings or dying. Link can also use the Fuse ability. Fuse is strictly a combat focus ability. You can take basically any collectible item and fuse it to Link's weapons or shield. Attach a sword to a rock and now you have a hammer. Maybe take a bomb and stick it to an arrow. Anything you can collect can be fused. Now there are some fusions that work better than others. Each item has a suggestion on what to fuse together. If you do this, the results will greatly increase your weapon's power, but it's an option. Some items can even change the look and the way your weapon behaves. This system does have an issue, and I actually have a solution. In order for Link to fuse, the item must be on the ground near him. Most of the time, you will want to fuse with items you've collected, which means you must drop the item to fuse it. Link actually can fuse items to arrows without doing this. I understand why this is, but Nintendo could have simply added a fuse exclusive option in the power wheel. Instead, Nintendo added a duplicate map button, which is silly because the menu button automatically goes to your map. You can also unfuse any items that you already fused together, and this too is not done smoothly. You have to go into the main menu, find your fused weapon, and unfuse it from there. Nintendo could have also removed the amiibo button and added a dedicated unfuse button. Overall, these minor issues aside, Fuse is a game changer. It's essentially weapon crafting on the fly and could turn the battle in your favor in seconds. Great addition that I hope Nintendo keeps and improves upon. Ascend can be both a combat tool and exploration time saver. Ascend allows Link to jump up and swim through most solid surfaces. So if you're inside a building and want to get to the top, use Ascend and swim to the roof. Some enemies can also be ascended upon. This creates a fun risk and reward as enemies can move, meaning it would be difficult to pull this off. Ascend is put to great use in exploration due to Nintendo adding many underground caves and wells. Most wells, the only way to leave is by using Ascend, so you will be using this ability a lot. Also, Nintendo balanced Ascend with its other exploration abilities such as climbing, as this does not take away from the usefulness of climbing. You will still be climbing just as much as you did in Breath of the Wild. You have a new tool added to your arsenal. Recall is probably my least used ability. It's basically a rewind tool commonly used in puzzle solving. It could be used in combat as well by rewinding time to send a projectile back to the enemy. But oftentimes other abilities such as fuse and simply dodging is more convenient to do. For puzzles, it works great, mostly used in shrines to manipulate physics and provide a platform for Link. As you explore different places, surfaces may fall and you can rewind time to put them back in their place. You can even use rewind on your creations. So let's say one of your created vehicles got stuck in a ditch in the depths. You can use rewind to pull it out the ditch, just in case Ultra Hand cannot lift it up. Auto build is basically a quality of life ability. Basically allows you to save designs you created so you don't have to manually build them over and over again. I would save this for more creative inventions, as it's fun to build simple things, but for something that takes a lot of time to create, it comes in handy. The last abilities you could say are the Sage abilities. Link can spawn in a spirit version of each Sage to help him in combat. Toland is probably the most useful, as his ability of wind can push you while gliding, with saves on your stamina. Unibo can come in handy for destroying rocks, saving you bombs and hammers. Sidon honestly is the weakest, as his power really only matters in his temple, but he could put a water shield around Link, which you can even use as a projectile. Ryuji is pretty useless outside of her dungeon, as her lightning strike is cool, but because she is moving around, it's difficult to activate. That's another thing about these abilities. To use them, you have to be near the sages. In a fight, this is annoying because they're moving around and can even disappear. Minoru is the last one, and she is useful in the depths as you can ride her to avoid the gloom. She is a mech, so basically you can fuse items to her for combat, but she uses battery when riding her. Best to attach weapons on her and let the AI control her because Link can easily get hit by arrows while riding her. Speaking of the depths, let's go over the 2 new places Link can explore. The depths is basically underground Hyrule, similar to the dark worlds of other Zelda games. At first, this place is very dark and you must use different items to light your way. The dark gimmick in the beginning is great, as in the beginning of the game, this place is a complete mystery to you. Not being able to see plus the gloom enemies all over can really make this place feel like a survival horror experience. Down in the depths, any gloom damage Link takes he cannot heal from unless he uses the light roots or specific items. These are basically checkpoints, the light roots, and they heal only one time upon the first use. You would think you should come very prepared before exploring the depths. However, that's not the case, as at any moment you can just teleport out of the depths. So a lot of this tension is taken away because of the fast travel system. The glow from the light roots also remove tension as they begin to remove the darkness from the depths. After a while, this place just becomes a barren purple Hyrule with nothing to do but fight gloom enemies and collect very few specific items only found down here. Don't get me wrong, the depths is still a fun place, and there are plenty of quests that will take you there. However, the uniqueness will decrease as you begin to complete more of it. Maybe Nintendo could have made it a bit more challenging. Like, there are these very few places in the depths that you can actually use Ascend to leave the depths. Maybe disable fast travel and make it so the only way you can leave is to find one of these places. Really lean into the survival aspect and the spooky vibes. Now, the Sky Islands were very surprising. These were heavily advertised and seemed to be a selling point of the game, but honestly, these are the weakest new addition. They aren't offensive or anything, they just don't add much to the game for me. You could say they are bite-sized puzzle areas, with the puzzle focusing on how to get to the other island. The answer to this question is the same. You either glide, launch, or fly there. It's fun, but nothing special. Theme-wise, they look like ancient Hyrule, so that's cool. And here you can find Zone 9 enemies and bosses. Lastly, we'll go over dungeons and puzzles. Shrines, of course, are back and just as good as before. Solving puzzles using the new abilities and newly added items work great. I was actually stuck on a few of these. Nintendo has mastered the ability to make puzzles just right for all levels. Sure, you won't be banging your head against a wall with how difficult they are, but you also won't be bored with how simple they are. They are just right and just fun for everyone. Nintendo even improved the combat focused shrines, mixing in the gimmick of stripping Link's equipment away, similar to one of Breath of the Wild's DLCs. Dungeons are a mixed bag. Now, Nintendo said these dungeons would satisfy old school Zelda players. I could tell you that only one kinda does. They are improved over whatever the Divine Beasts were in Breath of the Wild, but not as good as past work. I think what happened was Nintendo decided to split up the dungeon experience. What I mean is, before you enter a dungeon, you typically have to solve a puzzle or complete some quests. Maybe Nintendo views all these steps as part of the dungeon. Reason I say this is because the water temple is very short, but the steps to get in take a while. My favorite dungeon was the lightning temple. You need to use mirrors to unlock doors to flip switches. I feel this dungeon was done best as the answer to puzzles weren't obvious. Every dungeon has a gimmick, all of which are enjoyable. When it comes to music, it's the same as Breath of the Wild. Mostly short tunes that come in at the right moment to remind you there is some music. In certain areas such as towns, they play a theme, and of course the music is great, like every other Zelda. Graphics are mostly the same, maybe slightly sharper. The game has a bright cartoon-like art style that adds to the feel-good nature of Hyrule. As someone that finds giant bug enemies creepy, I wasn't by the ones in Tears of the Kingdom, due to the cheerful art style. Frame rate was a big conversation online. fine. For me, frame rate only matters if it negatively affects my experience. Whether the game is 60 or 30 frames per second does not matter. The frame rate rarely drops, and when it did, it was only slightly when using Ultra Hand during a rainy storm. So did Nintendo pull it off? Is this game worth $70? In my opinion, yes, but Nintendo still pulled a fast one. Remember, this game was $60. I think they only increased the price because that's becoming the new standard price for AAA games. For me, if I beat a game and I'm still playing it days after completion, and not one time did I question my purchase, it was worth the money I spent. As far as it being worthy of being called a sequel, I would say gameplay wise, yes. Mostly everything is improved, or at least just as good as Breath of the Wild. From a story standpoint, well, no. They completely made the first game's story make no sense, so of course from a writing standpoint, it's not good. I compare Tears of the Kingdom to Majora's Mask because it reused most of Breath of the Wild's assets and was a sequel just like Majora's Mask was to Ocarina of Time. Ocarina of Time for me is one of the greatest games of all time, and Majora's Mask is right beside it. Breath of the Wild for me was just a good game, and Tears of the Kingdom is too. The thing that was missing for me is that spark. It's hard to put in words, but it's that feeling you get when you play something so good you can feel it in your body. There was a moment here or there like that, but majority of my time it was just a good experience. Every opinion doesn't need to be extreme. Games shouldn't live or die between two scores. It's either a game is game of the year or it's trash. I don't believe in that. Sometimes game of the year is just a good game. I'm giving my full recommendation to buy Tears of the Kingdom at full price. A solid 7 out of 10. Thank you for sticking around to listen to my review. Please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. I'll be doing more reviews and other video game coverage in the future. Thank you.